I'm announcing the release of my very first book, Wins, Losses, and Lessons, what sports taught me about life. It's about life. It's about sports and the lessons you can learn through sports about life. Available now on Amazon. Link is in the bio. If you would like a signed copy, just hit me up on whatever social platform you see this on. Peace. If you're trying to figure out what matters in the new year, listen. The Jamaal Bethea Show. 7 minutes, one idea. As you saw at the beginning of the video, my first book, Wins, Losses, and Lessons, is out on Amazon. It took a full 10 years from concept, going through some things in life, changing the ideology, changing it again until you get what you get. So Wins, Losses, and Lessons available on Amazon. Please purchase the book. Show me some love. So today, the funny thing about life and pain is that life and pain, they teach you more than like winning and success really can. And it's crazy because the concept that I'm giving you today really came from a place of loss. I recently lost something that was very dear to me, something that I thought would last forever. And it hurt like a motherfucker. I can't lie to you. But I can't really tell you that I regret how things went because it was necessary. And so it's literally just, talking about regret and looking backwards. What could you have done different? How could you have been different? How could you have shown up better? And those things result in basically regret. You know what I mean? And the trigger word that I really came up with was integrity. And I even went to the internet so I could make sure I found a definition for this. But integrity is the quality of being honest, having strong moral principles, and maintaining consistency between actions, values, and words, even when no one is watching. That came from Wikipedia. That's a very meaty definition. Because let's unpack this. There's being honest. Most people are willing to be dishonest as long as they get their way. There's having strong moral principles. Strong moral principles means I don't care what you guys are saying. I don't care what it looks like. This is what I believe. You know what I mean? This is what I stand on. This is how I act. Maintaining consistency between actions, values, and words. We've all contradicted ourselves as humans. But being as consistent as possible. I said this and I act like this. Like, I'm going to be so devastated if we break up. And then you rebound to somebody else shortly after. Maybe you were comfortable. Maybe you needed comfort. Maybe you were just coping. And there's no judgment in that because there's no morality in having a rebound. But emotionally, you let your emotions dictate something else when you knew you weren't quite ready for that. That's inconsistent, right? And even when no one's watching. Because we can tell people anything. We could tell people anything, but the truth is, who are we when nobody's looking? That's what we always talk about. So I just wanted to talk about the regret of integrity. Like, people don't think about, and I'm actually already working on another book. Like, I have a book out. I have 2 books in waiting, and I'm working on another one. Trust me, I'm not doing too much. You won't even see my second book. What is this, February? This is late February 2026. You may not see my next book until this time next year. So trust me, I already got the timeline and everything. But the regret of integrity, that's really heavy because when you think about it, people talk about maturity, integrity, being that, that highbrow person as if you always win. The truth of the matter is, even being integral, you lose. Even being integral, you absolutely end up losing sometime. As basketball players, Kobe Bryant, the desire to win. You can name a billion other people that have that desire to win. Sometimes you see guys, especially in sports, I have a life and sports lesson framework, wins, losses, and lessons. You see people who are willing to color outside the lines as long as they can say they won. As long as they can hold that trophy up and say champion, people are willing to color outside the lines. And then you ask yourself, was that integral? That famous play where, 1998? I think it might have been game 5 or something in Indiana where Reggie kind of runs, shoves Mike out the way, catches the ball, swishes a 3 to win the game. That might have been a light bump to some people. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it was against the rules. Technically, it's an offensive foul. But Reggie was willing to color outside the lines just to say he was a winner. And Reggie Miller retired without a ring, and he really deserved that, The Malice at the Palace probably took the chance for the Pacers to win because they were the best team in 2004-05. They really were. But the truth of the matter is, how do you decide between that? Life is heavily nuanced. It's very ambiguous. So how do you decide that person was wrong for doing that in that moment? Well, according to the definition of integrity, it doesn't matter what the moment was. It's about how you're supposed to behave morally, regardless. You got to be honest. So if you're playing against Kobe Bryant and you can't stop him, you're willing to trip him if the ref is not looking. You're willing to pull his shirt if the referee's not looking. All of these different things people are willing to do in order to win, but they're not necessarily integral. But what happens when they do win? Now you have that famous quote, do the ends justify the means? Looking at the result I got to, can you blame me for how I got there? Well, according to integrity, yes, I can. You did not act with integrity. But then you ask yourself, as the integral person, damn, did I just lose? Even though I was integral? That's the regret of integrity. What if you walked away from a relationship you wanted so super bad because you could just tell, at least at that moment, it wasn't it? And now maybe they end up with somebody else. And the more mature version of them that wasn't with you is with them. And so now if things are fine, you look like you were the issue. But hey, you were integral, right? Maturity fucking sucks sometimes. That's the truth. It sucks sometimes to be mature, integral, because at the end of the day, if people are honest, you still lose. Why do they say it's lonely at the top? Ain't a lot of people up there. You always reap heavy, excellent rewards when you do things correctly. Don't get me wrong. But man, you also really, really lose some things. And I don't think people talk about that enough. Even in being integral, even in being excellent, even in being moral, even in being mature, you may still very well lose. And sometime when that's the case, you're left with regret. I'll see you in the next episode.